George Anthony is the father of Casey Anthony, which makes him the grandfather of Caylee Anthony, who was murdered aged just 2. So what the heck does he mean when he says this while giving evidence at Casey's murder trial?
I'm going to clarify that again. I think I've done that very well. You're trying to take this joy of my life away from me, sir, and you can't do it anymore.
It's a big question. What's going on with the dad of Casey Anthony? Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And what I do here is different from anywhere else because I strip away everything apart from the words that are said. And then I use my process of statement investigation to give you the key to seeing possible deception, maybe where the truth is, and the motivations of a person. It's a process I use with corporate clients, with investigators, and the media to get a deep understanding of what is being said. Now, I've had a lot of requests to look at Casey's parents. I'm going to look at George, who did a polygraph test once, quite famously. So let's see, do we think from the words he's using, is he lying? To start off with, I asked you, the audience, what do you think about George and what do you want to know about him? So let's look at some of the comments. Martina says he's a somewhat shady character, but he did not deserve at all to be thrown under the bus by his pathological liar daughter. Insight Perceptive said that he's a victim who lost his mind because of the tragedy he suffered. Everything we saw of him was after his grandbaby was murdered, and he most likely knew it was his daughter the whole time. Jersey Baby says he's a poor man and he's a victim of his narcissistic daughter. I feel bad for him. He's not a perfect guy, but who is? Derfel says, total victim, poor guy. Braun, I'm interested in this, especially given his knowledge of law enforcement. That will come up, Braun. We also have Rosie. There really is something wrong with both her parents, says Rosie. Truth always wins, says leave him alone, which I love because when I get those comments, I'm like, maybe I'm going to be this guy's biggest advocate and supporter because I will look at the words and I will call it as I see it. And Anderson says, interesting, I think there's something slightly off with him. So you can see a real mixed bag of opinions on George Anthony. So we're going to look at him giving some evidence at Casey's murder trial, of which she was acquitted. And I want you to look out for a few things as we watch his evidence. Keep an eye on the tenses that he uses. Is he in past tense or is he in present tense? That's going to be very interesting. Look at his answer starters, i.e. the first word or first couple of words that he starts an answer with. And also watch out for his use of pronouns. Very often when we use personal pronouns like I, my, me, it suggests we are really committed to what we're saying, i.e. we believe it. When we're lying, we may pull away from using such personal pronouns. So with all that in mind, tenses, how he starts answers, look at the pronouns he uses. Let's listen to a minute or so from George Anthony.
You told him that something had happened to Caylee and Casey was lying.
Sir, definitely something happened to Caylee. She's no longer with us. And Casey was the last one that I saw with Caylee. 1 and 1 adds up to 2, sir, in my mind. And no matter how you're trying to spin it, I'm upset because my granddaughter is missing. I don't know where she's at. I was told that someone had taken my granddaughter, forcibly removed her from my daughter, or my daughter dropped her off at some house. I'm trying to put all the stories and information together, sir. Was I running on pure emotion and drive and demanding answers? That is my right as a father and a grandfather, and as whatever you want to spin it. Was I upset and falling apart at the moment? Absolutely. My family was being torn apart. And for you to say that I was doing something wrong, sir, you're wrong.
There is the lovely Casey. So here we've got him answering a question. I don't quite know where the question comes from. That was the very start of the video that I looked at. You told him that something had happened to Caylee and Casey was lying, sir. And his response starts with the answer. So the answer starts with the word sir. Sir, definitely something happened to Caylee. Now, normally when I'm hearing someone say sir at the start of the answer, I get to wondering, I don't make a definite conclusion, but are they being overly polite? Is he being overly polite here to win over the person asking the question, to sound like a really polite guy? However, what you might see as we go through this is that George uses sir a lot. I think partly maybe from his law enforcement background, where they will use that respectful form of address with people for all sorts of reasons. It gets people on side, but it also gives them some authority and so on. So I think that's why the sir comes in at the start of the answer and lots of the ways through lots of the answers. However, he started that answer with sir. And you're going to notice that he doesn't start some answers with sir, but he starts lots of answers with sir. Definitely something happened to Caylee. She's no longer with us. Now, that is downplaying what's happened. Caylee was murdered. Caylee was found dead. So there is some element of downplaying going on there. Now, why is that? Well, sometimes that is because people are trying to soften the severity of what happened to make it seem not so bad. For example, if you're accused of stealing some money, you might say, I didn't take it, because taking is less strong than stealing. Here he might be doing that, or it might be really painful for the guy to talk about what happened to his granddaughter, and he feels that softening it and she is no longer with us is a better way of saying it. My mind's really open than this guy straight away, so I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, unless I see lots of data points that don't point that way. And Casey was the last one that I saw with Caylee. Now, what is going on there? Casey was the last one that I saw with Caylee. He's kind of throwing an accusation at her, and this is her murder trial, but he's not saying outright, I think that Casey has something to do with it, or it's dead obvious that Casey's had something to do with it. So as well as maybe downplaying the severity of what happened and softening the severity of what happened, he's also softening Casey's involvement there, I think, or her potential involvement. He does that again when he says 1 and 1 adds up to 2, sir, in my mind. So what we have here is that, again, he's not coming out right there and saying, I think Casey did something here. He's saying 1 and 1 adds up to 2. So it got me thinking here, is he protecting Casey somewhat here? Is he softening things in a protective way towards her? He's not, obviously, not coming out and defending her and saying she didn't do it. I do not think that she's guilty at all. He is pointing towards that, but at the same time, he's using very soft language to describe that. He does say 1 and 1 adds up to 2, sir, in my mind. So he's not saying it's a fact here. He's just saying it's in his mind. He's telling us what he thinks, but he's potentially not sure. Maybe he has no evidence. Again, this suggests that in my mind, he's qualifying it slightly. Is he protecting Casey a little bit? He says, and no matter how hard you're trying to spin it, I'm upset because my granddaughter is missing. Now that made me jump because that is present tense. I'm upset. Now, that would be fine. Your granddaughter is dead. You could be permanently upset. I get that. But because my granddaughter is missing. So, but this is the murder trial. We know that Caylee has been murdered at this point. So she's no longer missing. She has been found. So why is he using the present tense here? I'm upset because my granddaughter is missing. I don't know where she's at. Now, I talk a lot about why people will use the present tense to describe past events, because what you would expect, normal use of English, was I was upset because my granddaughter was missing and I didn't know where she was. But no, we've got this present tense, especially around my granddaughter is missing, and it pulled me up here. Now, why do people do that present tense for a past event? Sometimes it can be to create drama. Storytellers are great at this. They will tell you a story from the past, but they'll do it in present tense, so you're really in the moment with them when they're doing it. Is that what's going on here? Don't think so. Sometimes it's because someone's a liar, and they are making events up in the present time in their head, pretending they happened in the past, but because it's happening in their head at the present time, they use the present tense. Is that what's happening here? Sometimes it's trauma. Sometimes when things are really traumatic and you experience a traumatic event, when you talk about it, even though it's in the past, you feel what is happening at that time, and therefore, because it feels like it's happening again, you will go into the current tense, the present tense, which is interesting because he starts with I'm upset, which would give me that use of the present tense because the feeling is right there at the moment. I'm upset because my granddaughter is missing and I don't know where she's at. He then says, I was told, so he's moved into the past tense again. I was told that someone had taken my granddaughter. Now, maybe rewind if you can and watch again. I think he's about to say, I was told that a kidnapper had her or a kidnapping had taken place. I don't think it's I was told that a kid had taken her or something like that. I do think he's going to say kidnapping. I think it's like kid, and then he stops. But he thinks better of saying that word, kidnapping. Again, what follows that is a little bit softer than kidnapping. Someone had taken my daughter is not as severe as my daughter had been kidnapped, my granddaughter, forcibly removed from my daughter, or my daughter dropped her off at some house. These are all very soft things, much less soft than this kidnapping. So again, he seems to be bringing the severity of the language down. And he starts to say kidnap, I think, and then thinks better of it and moves on to say something else, which is that someone had taken my granddaughter, forcibly removed her from my daughter, or my daughter dropped her off at some house. Now, what? Were you told three different things? It's possible, but were you not just told one thing? I believe that is the story that went on, that she said she dropped her daughter off at the babysitter's, but she seems here to have told three stories, or George has heard three stories. Someone had taken my granddaughter, forcibly removed her from my daughter, or my daughter dropped her off at some house. So there's three possibilities there. Bit strange, those ones. Forcefully removed her from my daughter is what he said. That's not a very natural way of saying things. It's certainly not anything I've heard around this story. Or my daughter had dropped her off at some house. And some house, why is he using some house? Because there is a story behind what that house was. It really was some house, because it wasn't very much of a real thing in the life at all. But again, he's not very clear here about what he was told at the time. So yeah, is he being 100% honest there with what he's been told? Or is this a recollection that has a little bit more about it? He then says, again in the present tense, I'm trying to put all the stories and information together, sir. You'll notice he was asked in the question, so the question was, you told him that something had happened to Caylee and Casey was lying, sir. He doesn't take on the Casey was lying part of that at all. He doesn't deal with the fact that he was asked about Casey lying, which gives me this larger impression that, for better or worse, he's doing some protecting of his daughter here in this testimony. He then does this really interesting thing that he does, which is he questions himself and gives the answer, which is maybe a brilliant strategy in court. Was I running on pure emotion and drive and demanding answers? That is my right as a father and a grandfather. And as whatever you want to spin in it, was I upset and falling apart at that moment? Absolutely. So he's asking himself questions and answering himself questions, which is a great strategy for being able to just add something to your testimony, because you weren't asked, were you running on emotion and demanding answers? You weren't asked if you were upset or falling apart at the moment. You've decided to ask yourself that question, George, and then answer it. Was I running on pure emotion and drive and demanding answers? That was my right as a father and a grandfather. Now, I want you to notice the ordering of that. That will come up again later. My right as a father and grandfather. Now, most often when I see lists, I always say the first thing we mention is the most important thing in a list. It's the priority to us, and then that goes down in descending order as we carry on down the list. However, I do say there's an exception to that, which is chronological lists. So if you were listing things that happened in time, you wouldn't say the most important thing happened first. You would say the earliest thing happened first. And I think that's what this list is. So I don't think this is an indication that he thinks being a father is more important than a grandfather. It's that father came first, grandfather came second. That'll become interesting as we carry on. Whatever you want to spin it, was I upset and falling apart at the moment? So he's moved back to the past tense here. Absolutely. You'll all know my thoughts on the word absolutely. I'm not going to go into that here. My family was being torn apart. And for you to say that I was doing something wrong, sir, you're wrong. So, you're wrong is quite straightforward. You're wrong is a very straightforward phrasing. So I'm going to take that from him and say, yeah, I think he is on board with thinking that, no, he wasn't doing anything wrong. I'm interested in my family was being torn apart. That obviously is part of the bigger story, because the very beginning of this seemed like a missing persons case, which may cause a lot of stress, but would it tear apart a family at the time? Would tearing apart a family be the priority at the time, or would finding Caylee be the priority at the time? But there certainly was some strife going on there, and it's the first thing that he mentions in it, so he's definitely undergone some strife there. And you say that I was doing something wrong, sir. You're wrong. We'll look at that as we go on. Just the phrase was, I was doing something wrong. This is in the past tense, which is what we would expect. He's moved back into the past tense. What I will notice is that there is a high use of personal pronouns through this answer. Was I running on pure emotion? That is my right as a father. Was I upset? My family was being torn apart. For you to say, I was doing something wrong, sir, you're wrong. There's a high use of I and my pronouns there. So that is reassuring to me that he is committed to what he is saying. So in that first answer, I do see a desire to control the conversation with these asking questions to himself. I think he really forcefully wants to put his point across. He definitely has strong views. Telling someone you're wrong is very strong views. He is committed to what he's saying. We heard all those pronouns there, but he is downplaying a lot of what is happening. But is that downplaying the severity to make it sound not as big as it was, or is that through trauma? I think we'll learn more about that as we go on looking at this excerpt from the testimony. But is he protecting Casey? In that one answer, I get some sense that he may well be protecting Casey. What are your thoughts? I find this really fascinating, so thank you to everyone that suggested it, because this is a lot more complex than the normal analysis. Normally, it's someone who's just telling the truth, or more often than not, there's someone I can just spot some lies popping off left, right, and centre. But with this one, I think it's a lot more nuanced. I think there's a lot more to it. So thank you for suggesting it. If this episode does well enough in terms of getting likes and views and listens and all that sort of stuff, I may well come back to this guy because I find him absolutely fascinating. So if you want more of him, do let me know in the comments or get in touch with social media and let me know too. Let's go back into the courtroom and hear some more from George.
Do you recall testifying in your deposition that you did not believe that the car was human decomposition?
Sir, that answer, I believe, speaks for itself. I remember being asked about this at the very beginning when I talked about walking up to that car and getting about 3 feet away from it, and the smell that emanated from that car. I could smell it 3 feet away on the passenger side. When I opened up that car door, yeah, it smelled like decomposition, human decomposition. I will clarify that. If I didn't say that exactly at that deposition, at that particular point, that's because, again, sir, you have to, when you relive stuff over and over again that is traumatic in your life, you try to give the most complete answer that you can. Was it decomposition to me? Yes. Was it not my granddaughter or my daughter that I found in the trunk of that car? No, they weren't there. But there is a smell of human decomposition in that car, not the garbage that was in it. I'm stating true facts of what I saw, what I observed, and what I went through that day, and what my feelings were. Neither my granddaughter nor my daughter were in the trunk of that car, and I'm grateful for that, because I don't know if I could have dealt with seeing them back there.
Wow, powerful stuff. George has asked, do you recall testifying in your deposition that you did not believe that the car was human decomposition? No, I think that is that the car did not have human decomposition inside it. It's a badly phrased question, I believe. He starts his answer with sir. Again, I've told you why I think that is his law enforcement training, but he started another answer with the word sir. And then he says, that answer, I believe, speaks for itself. That's a non-answer. Do you recall testifying in your deposition that you did not believe that in the car was human decomposition? That should just be, yes, I do. No, I don't. It's a question about recalling. Instead, he says, sir, the answer, I believe, speaks for itself. Then he creates a whole load of distance when he goes on to give extra, which is what this is. This is something he feels is important to say because that question could be covered off with yes or no. He goes on to give his own testimony, and this is always very interesting because when someone goes extra, they want to say it. They have a reason for wanting to say it. He says, I remember being asked about this at the very beginning when I talked about walking up to that car and getting about 3 feet away from it. So what we have here, he's created a lot of distance from the story that he's telling. I remember being asked about this at the very beginning when I talked about walking up to the car, getting about 3 feet away from it. Huge distance. Again, is this sort of downplaying, lacking severity, or is this delaying getting to the traumatic part of what it is that he's talking about? He says, so I talked about walking up to that car and getting about 3 feet away from it and the smell that emanated from that car. You'll notice he calls it that car, which suggests distance, lack of ownership from it. So if someone ran you over, I was run over by that car. If you get into your own car, I got into my car. Or if it's a family car, are we going in the car? He calls it that car, which suggests a level of disdain for the car almost there. I could smell it. 3 feet away on the passenger side when I opened up the car door. Yeah, it smelled like decomposition, human decomposition. I'm not entirely sure where he's saying he could smell it though, because he talks about walking up to the car and getting about 3 feet away from it, and the smell that emanated from the car. I could smell 3 feet away on the passenger side when I opened up the car door. If you're 3 feet away from the car, yeah, I can't open up the car door. So when did he smell it? Maybe it's a minor point. Maybe I'm quibbling over something really, really trivial. Or maybe his story doesn't quite hang together. It smelled like decomposition, human decomposition, he says. And I will clarify that if I didn't say that exactly at that deposition, at that particular point, that's because, again, sir, you have to, when you relive stuff over and over again that is traumatic in your life, you try to give the most complete answer that you can. Now, that is almost meaningless because it's just a little bit of a word salad there, but a couple of interesting things in it is you'll notice that he's moved from I pronouns to you pronouns. I will clarify, if I didn't say exactly that, that's because you have to, when you relive stuff over and over again that is traumatic in your life, you try to give the most complete answer you can. So he's moved it from I, talking about himself, onto you, which is me, you, us, or the attorney asking him the questions, but he's not really talking about himself. And why is that again? Well, it could be that he's really trying to get the person who's listening to feel it. So he's not talking about himself, he's talking about you, so you can put yourself in his shoes and feel the feelings that he has. But he mentions the word traumatic, and I said, I think there's trauma inside this guy, or it's possible there's trauma inside this guy. That was why he was using present tense in some of the first answer, and he's mentioned trauma now as well, and he said that this was traumatic. Was it decomposition to me? Yes. So he's gone into doing the thing again where he asks his own questions and then answers his own questions. Was it decomposition to me? Yes. Was it not my granddaughter or my daughter that I found in the trunk of the car? No, they weren't there. So you'll notice this time that the granddaughter comes first before the daughter. The ordering there is different from when he said, I'm a father and a grandfather. Now, why is that? Is it just most likely that the granddaughter was going to be, sadly, the person that may most likely be found in the trunk of the car rather than the daughter? I don't know, but certainly the granddaughter takes priority for him here. And it is out of the chronological order because daughter would come before granddaughter chronologically. So he's put Caylee up ahead of Casey there. Was it not my granddaughter or my daughter that I found in the trunk of the car? No, they weren't there, but there is a smell of human decomposition in that car, not the garbage that was in it. So he has moved from past tense. No, they weren't there in past tense, but there is a smell of human decomposition in that car, not the garbage that was in it. So he's gone to present tense again, leaning towards trauma being the thing that leads him to talk in present tense when he's talking about past events. He says, I'm stating true facts of what I saw, what I observed, and what I went through that day, and what my feelings were. Neither my granddaughter nor my daughter were in the trunk of that car, and I'm grateful for that, because I don't know if I could have dealt with seeing them back there. He starts off with saying, I'm stating true facts. Now, this is why I believe some of what's going on here with George twists my normal analysis on top of its head, because when someone tells you they're being truthful, I very often say, why do they feel the need to flag that? Is it because they're lying and they think they'll make the lie more believable by saying, I'm stating true facts? Or is it the fact that everything else has been a lie and this is the truth, and so therefore finally they can say, honestly, everything else was a lie, but I'm stating true facts here? What I think we need to bear in mind here is this guy is under pressure at this point. He is being questioned in a court quite aggressively, and he wants to stay. He is saying the truth. His truthfulness is under question here, and that is when it is more expected that you will fire up and say, I'm stating true facts. So I'm not going to pull him up for that. I'm actually going to say, no, there's nothing to see there. Now, the story is about the smell in the car. Yeah, the story is about the smell in the car. Although, interestingly, what he says was the best thing about that story is that there was no body in the trunk. And he says, I'm stating true facts of what I saw, observed, and what I went through and what my feelings were, but nothing about smell at all. I'm stating true facts of what I saw, I observed, what I went through and what my feelings were. So he's talking about what he saw, what he observed, and then more emotional things, what I went through and what my feelings were, but nothing around smell. So look, maybe because this is about the fact he didn't mention the smell earlier, maybe, just maybe, the smell story is not true and I'm being sort of hoaxed here because there are some things that say this doesn't all quite add up. But then he carries on to say, neither my granddaughter nor my daughter were in the trunk of that car. Caylee first, Casey second there again, so that's his priority, is his granddaughter. And I'm grateful for that because I don't know if I could have dealt with seeing them back there. So in this answer, he doesn't answer the question or give a straightforward reason for why his deposition doesn't match what he's gone on to say. So yeah, there is a question mark over the smell question. He is less committed through pronouns. He still does some of them, but there's a little bit less of them here. Present tense with him, I do think indicates trauma and a traumatic experience for the guy. But I don't think he is being honest about the smell. There's something up there. I'm not entirely sure what, but there's something up there that's making him not honest around the smell. Let's get some more from George Anthony in court.
The explanation that you give during your deposition is clearly the trash, is it not? Would you like to look at it?
Sir, there's also a difference between trash and garbage.
And there's also a difference, sir, of saying it's human decomposition and not human decomposition?
I didn't say anything about not being human. I said decomposition. I'm going to clarify that again. I think I've done that very well. You're trying to take this joy of my life away from me, sir, and you can't do it anymore.
Would you like to see
I'm
your
going to answer this to you, sir. The decomposition that I smelled in the trunk of my daughter's car on July 15th, 2008 at Johnson's Towing smelled like human decomposition.
Would you
To
like
me, sir, that's what it smelled like to me. And my knowledge of law enforcement and what I saw for 10 years of law enforcement gives me that opportunity to know what that is. I can close my eyes at the moment, sir, and I can smell that again. How dare you, sir, try to tell me that I did something differently than what I did?
So he's getting more and more emotional there. And my analysis is changing as I even watch that for about the 10th time I've watched it. I'll talk you through that as we go. So the first question put to him is, the explanation that you give during your deposition is clearly the trash, is it not? Would you like to look at it? He starts his answer with the word sir again. Sir, there's also a difference between trash and garbage. Now, is there a difference between trash and garbage? There is. I had to look it up and find out what it was. If you know, do let me know in the comments. What do you think is the difference between trash and garbage? Do let me know. It continues, and there's also a difference, sir, of saying it's human decomposition and not human decomposition. And he says, I didn't say anything about not being human. Double negative there. Really hard to decode. I did not say anything about not being human, which is him telling us all the things that didn't happen. As I always say, when someone tells you what didn't happen, what's not happening or what they're not feeling, look into the opposite of that because it may well be true. I said decomposition. I'm going to clarify that again. Now, this is him taking control of the situation again. He's obviously got a bit of steel inside him, is George, and he says, I'm going to clarify that again. I think I've done that very well. He's praising himself there. And then there is that line. You're trying to take this joy of my life away from me, sir, and you can't do it anymore. Now, I heard that and went, what the hell is going on there? What joy is in his life? Because my mindset was very much in the things that he was describing at the time, which is around about the murder of his granddaughter that he thinks has been murdered by his daughter. What's the joy in that? And then I wondered if actually what he was doing was, one of the things he mentioned about the smell was that he was glad when he opened the trunk there was no bodies of any of his family in there. Was that a joyful moment? Yeah, that was, I guess, a kind of like relief at the time, although it didn't play out to be a complete relief for him. But was that what he was talking about when you're trying to take this joy of my life away from me? I think it's therapy speak. I think that it's therapy speak. It's something that he's learned through therapy or counselling, and he's using it on the stand. You're trying to take this joy of my life away from me, sir, and you can't do it anymore. But there we have anymore there, which suggests that it has been done quite a lot for him. The joy of his life has been taken away from him quite a lot. The attorney says, would you like to see, which I believe is about, would you like to see your testimony? And once again, we see that still. Let me answer this to you, sir. The decomposition that I smelled in the trunk of my daughter's car on July 15th, 2008 at Johnson's Towing smelt like human decomposition. To me, sir, that's what it smelled like to me. Now, this is where I've changed. Why? Well, you can see, if you can see this episode, that I've marked all that up in green because I thought it was really straightforward. The decomposition that I smelled in the trunk of my daughter's car on July 15th, 2008 at Johnson's Towing smelled like human decomposition. To me, sir, that's what it smelled like to me. Now, I marked that up mostly in green because it's very straightforward. It's nothing persuasive in it. There's very little that's convincing in it. I'll come and talk about that later. But I missed this entirely until I watched it there. He talks about the smelling of the decomposition being in the trunk of my daughter's car, and earlier he said he could smell it from 3 feet away from the car and around about the passenger door when the passenger door was opened. So he's given us yet another description of where this smell was coming from. I said and thought there was something interesting about the smell, and I believe there's something interesting about the smell. And he finishes it off, and this is slightly qualified. To me, sir, that's what it smelled like to me. He's repeated the phrase to me there. That gets me interested because why is someone repeating something? Quite often it's to really get it across, to make sure it's landed. But what it is to me. So he's not saying that that is a fact. He's not saying that everyone else feels the same way. In fact, that's something that manipulators quite often do, is not just me. There was lots of other people felt the same way, but he's standing on his own 2 feet here and not saying that everyone else feels like it. He's saying that he feels like it to me. Was there another opinion there? Or was there someone else telling him what it was that he should report? I don't know, but I'm very interested in why he feels the need to tell us that something he experienced. Basically, he's to me. Well, we know it's to you. Who else would you be speaking for? Or are you speaking for someone else? And that is why you're having to tell us that, to me, this is what it sounded like. He then says, and my knowledge of law enforcement and what I saw for 10 years of law enforcement gives me the opportunity to know what that is. So the knowledge of law enforcement here, he's building his authority by saying, this is not just some average Joe saying this to you. I've got 10 years knowledge of law enforcement, 10 years of law enforcement, and gives me the opportunity to know what it is. So listen, for all he is giving across here that he's being bullied, I guess, on the stand a little bit, he's able to give it back, and he's able to use words and language to get his point across and make it strong, whether it is deceptively strong or whether it's just something he strongly feels. We'll look at as we go. And then he says, I can close my eyes at the moment, sir, and I can smell that again. How dare you, sir, try to tell me that I did something differently to what I did? And he says, I can smell that again. I can close my eyes at the moment and I can smell that again. Present tense. I believe that trauma is there. He can close his eyes and he can smell that smell again. Therefore, I'm kind of leaning towards the fact he did smell that smell, but someone has gotten to him in order for him to have said or pretended or whatever a very different experience. And it's, how dare you, sir, try to tell me that I did something differently to what I did. He's got a focus on doing and did. Here it's about, the question's about what he said. The answer he's giving is a little bit more about what he smelled, what he experienced. And he is not connecting with that. He is talking about his actions for some reason, and not so much his speech or not so much his experience. So look, in this answer here, he is not clear and flowing. It's a little bit all over the place at times. He is straightforward about what he experienced, which is the smell, but he's not straightforward about what he said. So listen, there's more from George, because coming up, he's going to discuss the allegations that he abused Casey and also his TV appearances. Do you ever feel like you're not being told the full story? You are right. It's happening all the time, and not just to you, but to all of us. I'm here to give you the key to hearing things differently. It's about hearing the world with new ears, and I'm on a mission to share it with as many people as possible. So if you want the secret to that, subscribe to this channel, follow and join in. There's also a treasure trove of archives. I've looked at Casey Anthony a couple of times if you want to look her up. Dig in there and learn more. And do you know someone who needs this, like someone who deserves to hear the truth? then hit the like button. That helps this get to more people. Share this, recommend it, do pass it on, because every click I get, every share fuels the fire for Never a Truer Word. It allows me to dig deeper, analyse further, and bring what I think is a life-changing skill to even more people. And if you give that skill to more people, if you recommend this and pass it on, what a great gift to give. Let's get back to George in the court.
How dare you, sir, try to tell me that I did something differently than what I did?
And that is why you called 911 right then and there, right?
No, sir, I did not call 911.
That's why you drove that car home.
Sir,
Argumentative, asked and answered.
you are arguing with me, sir. I'm trying to be
Sustained.
calm.
Rephrase your question, Mr. Bass.
And then you went to work, sir, did you not? After smelling this smell,
Objection, argumentative, asked and answered.
Overruled.
then you went to work.
I know exactly what I did, sir, and I'm not ashamed of what I did that day. There's no reason for me.
Strike non-responsive, Judge, to the question.
Right, so it's getting a little bit more tetchy. So this follows on from talking about smelling the bad smell in the trunk of the car. And he's asked, and that's why you called 911 right then and there, right? And he says, no, sir, I did not call 911. Bit of a change of pattern. We don't have sir at the beginning of the answer. We have no, first of all, which is a great answer to a yes-no question. I did not call 911. Very straightforward. It's obviously an evidence. It's obviously a fact that is known. And he tells us very straight, I did not call 911. Then we have some lawyers going off. That's why you drove the car home. Our argumentative is the objection asked and answered. And George says, you are arguing with me, sir. I'm trying to stay calm. Now, so many people are picking up on this trying thing. Trying always means failure. So he's trying to stay calm, but he's really not calm inside. And we saw that slightly earlier where he had this steel and was pushing back on it. So finally, we got a question that works for the way the law works. Then you went to work, and it said with a question mark. Then you went to work, and he says, I know exactly what I did, sir, and I'm not ashamed of what I did that day. There's no reason for me. He gets cut off. It's a non-answer. Then you went to work. He does not talk about going to work at all. I know exactly what I did, sir. Well, the whole point of testimony is for all the things you know to come out. But you're avoiding talking about what you did with that car when you got it. He says, I'm not ashamed of what I did that day. Well, for you to bring up ashamed, no one said you should be ashamed. It's not in the question at all. You've gone extra in bringing up shame. And I think you are ashamed of what you did that day for some reason. We all make choices that are not the best choices in the moment. And this one, he says, I'm not ashamed, but he hasn't been asked if he was ashamed. He's brought up shame and he's brought up not being ashamed, but I do think he is ashamed of what he did that day. We then get some legal non-responsive judge to the question. So listen, in this answer, he is very sensitive to the allegation or the insinuation that he carried on with life as normal, or potentially that he acted a bit strangely that day. Here's some more from George.
Do you recall being on 48 Hours?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall being paid $20,000 for that appearance?
You know, Mr. Baez, I have been nice to you. I have tried to answer every question to the best of my ability. And for what my wife and I might have retained from a news organization to bring awareness of my granddaughter, my daughter, and other missing children, that's what that article was exactly about. It had nothing to do with guilt or innocence or anything like that. We did that, sir, for self-preservations, to bring awareness for our children, for not only my granddaughter, because of how beautiful she was, and the life that she meant to us.
I'm going to object to the narrative, Judge. Non-responsive.
I think I would object as well. Listen, this is a bit of light relief before it gets very dark. He's asked, do you recall being on 48 Hours? And he says, yes, sir. So we've got, again, the sir very close to the beginning of the answer. And do you recall being paid $20,000 for that experience? And instead of a sir, we get a you know. This is him attempting to assert authority and drive the conversation again. You know, Mr. Baez, been nice to you. I have tried to answer every question to the best of my ability. We have that word tried in there, which is saying, yeah, maybe he hasn't. He's attempted to, but has he? I don't think he has answered every question to the best of his ability. Maybe how he'd like to answer the questions, but maybe not to the best of his ability, because he's only tried to do it. He hasn't answered every question to the best of his ability. It's there in his words. And from what my wife and I might have retained from a news organisation to bring awareness of my granddaughter, my daughter, and other missing children, that's what the article was exactly about. It starts to fall apart here. It's not very flowing. So from what my wife and I might have retained from a news organisation, downplaying and softening, made, cashed in, received, been paid. No, he uses the word retained, which is about the softest way you could say of we made £20,000 from a TV appearance when our granddaughter was missing. We might have retained from a news organisation to bring, and this is one that when you see the word awareness, when you see someone is claiming to do things for awareness, do dig into their words, because it's so often deceptive. And that's what I think is going on here. To bring awareness of my granddaughter, my daughter, and other missing children. Now, it's not awareness to help find my granddaughter. I don't know when this programme was on, so maybe it was on when Caylee was missing, or maybe the awareness that in his mind he wants to get across is awareness about the bad things that can happen to children. But he doesn't say any of that. He just wants to raise awareness of his granddaughter. Just strange. Not true there at all. I don't believe that was the point of it. I believe the point of it was cash, because he's downplayed the cash and cannot say what this program was about in terms that make sense, authentic terms that come from deep inside, that would be his words relaying his real experience, awareness of my granddaughter and my daughter, so the granddaughter comes first again, and other missing children. That's what the article was exactly about. Just not about, but he has to say it's exactly about. He's trying really hard here to convince us that there was nothing in this taking the money from the television program. It had nothing to do with guilt or innocence or anything like that. Now, again, he's gone extra. He was asked how much they got paid, basically, and he's talked about everything but how much they got paid. And he's brought up the concept of guilt and innocence or anything like that. He just does not ask the question. Let's look again at what the question was. Do you recall being paid £20,000 for that appearance? Yes? No? That's all it is there. He doesn't answer the question. And also there's a long distance between the question and the end of the answer. The answer goes on a journey if you watch. So the question is, do you recall being paid £20,000? And it starts with, I've been nice to you. And then it wanders all the way through retainers and awareness and missing children and ends up with guilt or innocence or anything like that. It is designed to take away the listener's mind from the question, which was about £20,000, to somewhere else entirely. So, yeah, I think he feels a bit stung by this £20,000. Look, if he wants to make £20,000, I'm not one to sit there and morally judge, but he's not being honest about it here in this answer. He carries on. We did that for self-preservation, to bring awareness for our for not only my granddaughter, because of how beautiful she was and the light that she meant to us. And then he gets interrupted. Now, you'll notice before he said that we were doing it for awareness, to bring awareness to my granddaughter. My daughter is what he said. And then all of a sudden we did that for self-preservation, to bring awareness for our children. So again, it's almost in his words there. We did it for self-preservation, to get money that was needed. Maybe it was needed to keep them going or something like that. But he's changed his motive for doing it. And I think he realizes that, which is why he pulls out of saying that thought and then talks about bringing awareness again. We did it for self-preservation, to bring awareness for our not only for my granddaughter. I don't buy that at all. And then we have the whole point about the narrative answer there. So look, in that answer, he was definitely evasive there. But it could be to avoid accusations of money making. In fact, I think it almost is to avoid accusations of money making, and not any guilt or innocence or implication in the whole story on his part. Right. There's some words missing out the next bit. My mission with this channel is to get to as many people as possible. If I leave these words in, that means that my content can get restricted, and that means it doesn't get to as many people as possible. So the words are missing. They will be on your screen when we analyze them. I will use a synonym for them when we go, because like I say, I want as many people to see this as possible. Let's have a listen to the last part of George's testimony that we're going to listen to today.
All of these media appearances stopped when the allegations of abuse came up, correct?
I believe that, sir, was done through you, sir.
Sir, do you recall finding out another way?
Relevance.
Please let me answer this.
You don't recall being asked by Mr. Ashton if you had ever met your daughter?
You have to be specific, sir, when that might have happened, could have happened. You're not being specific, sir.
First day of trial. You were asked.
And a question, yes, sir, and I never would do anything like that to my daughter.
You, of course, would never admit to your child, would you, sir?
Objection. Argumentative.
Overruled, he can answer the question if he can.
Sir, I never would do anything like that to my daughter.
My question is, you would never admit to it, would you, sir?
Sir, I would never do anything to harm my daughter in that way.
Okay, let's dig into that. And for me, this is quite a serious bit. So following on from the question about 48 hours, he's asked, all of these media appearances stopped when the allegations of abuse came up, correct? And George's response is, I believe that, sir, was done through you, sir. Not an answer to the question at all. So he is avoiding that. He just does not answer. The attorney says to him, sir, do you recall finding out another way? You don't recall being asked by Mr. Ashton if you'd ever abused your daughter. And again, he tries to assert control in his answer. You have to be specific, sir. When might that have happened? Could have happened. You're not being specific, sir. And he gets a bit of a shock when that control is taken away from him and it's put to him. First day of the trial, you were asked, and so he is showing every sign of avoidance here and not taking it on head first. Everything he can do to avoid answering the question, and he's getting penned in more and more. First day of the trial, you were asked, and he says, in a question, yes, sir, and I would never do anything like that to my daughter. Now, this is quite a serious answer. I don't like it. I do not like the words there. You may say it is a denial, but I've got questions about it. I never would do anything like that to my daughter, is what he said. Now, let's dig into that almost word for word. I never. Now, never is a red flag word for deception. When someone says never, it's a really tricky word to define what never means, and never can be used to sound very solid, very concrete. But in practice, we don't do that very much. I'd never drink on a school night. Well, yeah, I would. I'd never say that to you. Well, yes, you did. We find never a really easy word to make use sound so strong, but doesn't. So I'm not saying never is always a lie. What I am saying is when I see or hear never, I dig in around it. And it's, I never would do anything like that. Well, that's in the future. That's an intention. That's not about the past. This is not a denial of the past. I did not do that. Would be a denial in the past. It's I never would do anything like that to my daughter. And like that is downplaying. It's a little bit understandable here. It might be a horrible thing for a parent to have to say in front of people or anything at all. So I can understand why that downplaying is there. But in the whole scheme of things, I never would do anything like that to my daughter. Concerns me greatly. He's then asked a question which I think is a horrible question. You, of course, would never admit to abusing your child, would you, sir? Objection, argumentative. It's a horrible question. It's like the question of when did you stop beating your wife? You can't, and there's very few good answers to that question. And George comes back with, sir, I never would do anything like that to my daughter. It's the exact same words as he said before. I never would do anything like that to my daughter. I never, spoken about that, never would in the future do anything like that to my daughter. And the attorney says, my question is, you would never admit to it, would you, sir? I think it's a bad question. I think it's a really unfair question to ask, but, let's look at his answer. He says, sir, I would never do anything to harm my daughter in that way. So we have I would never, which again is in the future. He's not talking about the past again. It's just future focused there. And do anything to harm my daughter. Now that is bringing it down again. And it's not harm my daughter. It was not, I'd never do anything to harm my daughter. It's just in that way. It's slightly qualified. Nothing in that answer, I'm afraid, reassured me at all. This answer is just not convincing to me. So listen, I found that fascinating. I have so much to say about him. If you would like some more, do let me know. Let me know in the comments. Get in touch on social media. The more I can see there is a demand for this, then the more I will look at George and potentially Casey's mum as well. So what have I seen so far as I've been going through this? He wants to be in control here. There is something inside him that wants to be in control of this. I do think he suffered trauma. I do think that trauma lives with him at this moment, and is, very strongly felt inside him. I think he's intelligent because he has a great desire not to be trapped by words and not to be trapped by questions. I feel he's not acting alone. Some of that stuff around the car felt like he was being manipulated, made to say things, made to say he experienced things by other people. And the abuse allegations, I don't think he dealt with them convincingly at all. What do you think? Do let me know in the comments if you can, or get in touch on social media. NeverAtruerWord.com is the website where you'll find all the social media links there. Also, if you are on social media, if you join me on Telegraph, great way to talk directly to me if you've got any questions or suggestions for people we should look at as well. You can find all of that at NeverAtruerWord.com, and we'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word.